Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca,
And I'm Landon.
and we have a wonderful special guest on today. We have Tanner with us. How are you, Tanner?
Doing good.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering the call to come on the podcast. I have to describe how we're even sitting here tonight. So, of course, I'm always on, post-Mormon or Mormon social media, and I come across this post with a title that's something like Tucson, Arizona Mission disaster, right? Well, of course, that piques your interest. You're wondering what is happening. And it's linked to an article, which is written by Tanner. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is really interesting. We start kind of communicating on Messenger and then move over to email because this story, I mean, I want to say fascinating, but also heartbreaking. And I mean, maybe there isn't really one adjective that can describe what we're going to talk about in this episode. But what was interesting to me is I had two other people send me that post and say, you got to get this guy on. And I'm like, did it. I already did it. Pat myself on the back, right? So we're going to be talking with Tanner about his very unusual mission experience, which was about 10 years ago. We're talking about 2016. Is that right? Yeah. Why don't you just,
Mhm.
if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself now, you can, or if you want to just, start talking about the mission and lead up to, some other things about where you are now, however you feel you want to craft it.
So I served a mission in Tucson, Arizona. This 2014 to 2016, and so right now I've since left the LDS Church. Been out of the LDS Church for about 3 years now. Interesting facts: I actually become Protestant Christian since then. So for about 2.5 years now.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, people land in all kinds of different places, don't they, Landon? We have all kind of guests where they say, I've stepped away and then there's a blank, and it could be anything. I'm a
Mhm.
witch. I'm a Protestant Christian. I'm an evangelical. I'm an atheist. I'm an agnostic. Anything, which is great. Yeah, so tell us, the article was really interesting, and I'm going to link this in the show notes. But it seemed to be a time in the church where, of course, they wanted to encourage everybody to go on missions, but not everybody is exactly cut out for the rigors of mission life. And of course, now we have the option of the service mission, right? A lot of people choose that, and there's such a variety of experiences that you can choose ways to serve in that. And it's wonderful because some people that maybe never could have served a mission are able to do it in this capacity, but that didn't exist 10 years ago. That wasn't around. And Tanner's story is just, I guess the church had a concept of maybe if we had a bunch of missionaries in one place, ones that might not be able to do very well in other missions, this might be a good thing. And that's kind of where Tanner found himself. So why don't you just tell us about your mission? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The our mission, it was considered a medical mission, and this wasn't just a term that we made up. It was from our mission president admitting, saying, "Yes, this is what it is." And so the idea of a service mission, I don't. That really wasn't a thing back then, and so uh, the church came up with this idea of taking missionaries with mental health conditions, and they did not want to deny them from serving a mission because I imagine there's probably a lot of cultural dishonor, rejecting people saying I wasn't fit to serve a mission. So they came up with this idea of creating, I guess, special missions, particularly at least ours. I'm not sure how many of them there are, but and um, and so this mission, you would either, if you had preconditioned mental health conditions, it seemed like you just get sent to the Arizona Tucson mission. Some missionaries would go on a trial mission beforehand for like a transfer, and if they prove themselves that they could do it, then they get sent to the Arizona Tucson mission. Myself, I don't know why I got sent there. To be honest, I didn't have any pre-existing mental health conditions, and so
You
when I
didn't
got
list anything in your paperwork because I know I've helped
no.
sons fill it out, and it's very specific. It asks
Mhm.
you all kinds of things about, what your mental health condition
Well,
might be, your medications, or
I've got to assume that they needed some companions that were not in that
having those
same state.
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to imagine you weren't the only one that hadn't been medically uh, disqualified from serving prior.
Yeah, but no one knew this. No one knew that this is what this mission was. I mean, nobody, it was just the mission president knew, the church officials knew, but no one, like, somebody in your ward would go, oh yeah, Arizona, that's where they give the opportunity for people who may not be able to serve to go. You didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, none of us knew. They just said, okay, you're worthy enough to serve a mission, and this is where you're going to go. And so it was when I first showed up, I just had this idea on paper. The mission is no different. You just have a special population of missionaries who need more assisted help, I guess. But so on paper, everything was exact same. You'd have companions, you'd be doing missionary work. Nothing else was different.
But at what point did you understand that this is what this mission was? Once you were called, did they explain it to you before you arrived?
No.
This is something you just came to the conclusion having been there. So, okay. So at this point, you still think that's just a normal mission, just normal. Here I am.
Yeah, it was within the first couple of days entering the mission.
Okay.
It was, you just saw it and you couldn't ignore it. And it's because of the stories that were being floating around of what was happening at that time. Pretty much there was like a purge in our mission. So our mission president, he entered the mission about like a few weeks before I did. And so we got a new mission president a few weeks before I showed up. And there was a massive purge not to say massive, but there's a purge that happened, is what they called it. And a lot of missionaries were getting sent home, and they're the problematic ones. And to make way for this new mission president. And so that the mission was buzzed with that. Even just, agreeing, being there for a few days. It was the news was just buzzing, and I would hear it. Even though they try to shield me being a new missionary, they didn't want to ruin me quite yet. I still would hear the stories.
Do you know how long the mission had been in existence before you got there? How many years they'd been trying this? I mean, obviously there's a history if there was another mission president and a new one's coming in.
I think they've been in for quite some time, just based on comments that I saw on the article I posted to Reddit, and people were making comments saying that this has been like this for some time, going into like probably the 90s from what people were saying. Not entirely sure.
Wow.
We did have stories and like legends in our story of our mission that like these types of stories and crazy experiences were been there for a long time. And I had some of those confirmed too, that those were real stories. And it was when you go to the transfer site where all these missionaries were exchanged. When I first showed up, my first missionary, you could sense that there's some very odd characters inside this church hall in the chapel. And
that's where everybody joins together. We do have people that have never been Mormons. When the missionaries, every 6 weeks, they get sometimes a new companion. They get switched around. They all meet in one place, right? Usually a stake center or something like that.
Yeah.
And that, you see everybody there. You get my microphone went off.
Nope, it's still off. But yeah, transfer day is always used to be the day for me, it was the day you looked forward to, because you got to see all the guys you hadn't seen for 6 months or whatever, and you'd get to get together and you'd go to lunch before you broke off. So but it can also be a scary time when you find out who your companion is and you go, oh crap.
Yep. In front of everybody else too. Yep. But...
yeah, you're still no sound, Rebecca. So yeah, so go ahead, Tanner. You have the unique opportunity to speak when Rebecca can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You guys are both going, dang it. It's because I was waving my arm and I hit my microphone on the other side. I was going to say a transfer day is a day where you get the lay of the land. You see everybody, right? The whole landscape. And I guess that's when Tanner went, this seems a little different.
Yeah, so I started, just very quickly, with the district I'm in, we're all talking and hanging out, and they're telling me stories of like the 8 infamous missionaries who just got sent home right before I did, and that included one of them having sex with a minor, and then another one, a handful of others that were caught drinking at a zone meeting, I believe, or a transfer site, something along those lines.
So these aren't being sent. These missionaries aren't being sent home because of mental health concerns. these are missionaries that maybe just under the pressure of everything that's happening there, it sounds like a pressure cooker, are just cracking and things are happening.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that's pretty much that's what was being explained to me. You just had this rampant disobedience, and or people just not caring anymore and just being completely despiteful of the church. It's just shocking to me because when we are raised as a member of the LDS Church, the idea of a mission is romanticized. It's idolized. You grow up hearing stories. You're prepared for it since you're a little kid, and this is going to be your time for 2 years. It's going to be like a sacred experience. And then you get dumped into this mission, and you're automatically hearing all these stories of people committing, like egregious sins in the LDS Church. They're not just breaking mission rules; they're breaking either committing a crime or they're breaking, serious, commandments of the LDS Church of what's cleanliness and what's not. So, um, and so so immediately I got dumped into. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this mission? What did I just get sent into? I have 2 years of this, and so it was, it was very difficult to understand. And automatically, they're already telling me like, hey, you're going to see things and you're going to hear things on the mission, and don't write home about it. You're going to hear bad things. You're going to see bad things. Only write about the good missionary experiences and nothing else. We don't want your parents to be worried. We don't want your family to be worried. And in my opinion, it's going to put a bad image on the church. So don't talk about it. Well, even right out the gate, I was being told that. And I was being described, by other missionaries saying like, this is kind of like a land of lost toys mission where they're putting people here and isolating them. And it kind of, to me, it appeared like a containment strategy. And and we can speculate on those reasons later, but it was very difficult. I mean, and then the mission itself was very difficult. The work was chronically low. It's been like that for years, and there wasn't a whole lot. It was very difficult to do mission work there. The population is very difficult to work with, pretty hostile. Or you're in some crazy border town where like the atmosphere of being the Wild West has never really changed since like the 1800s. It's still been like that, and so you're working with that. And and then
I kind of thought originally that Tucson area would have a lot of members, and that's maybe why they decided to do it there. But you're saying it was kind of the opposite. It was like, you can't really screw this area up. Let's put it there. Or it seems like an odd. I thought they'd put it there because there's strong members there and they'll understand. And
No.
it'll cover a lot of crimes. The fact that the members are there and covering for them. But you're saying it was the opposite. It was a very difficult area to serve in, with members and that.
yeah, you had some towns would be like predominantly LDS, like to be like Utah status, like 90% LDS in some of these towns. Tucson had a decent amount, not a ton. So there's a big enough LDS presence there that they could put you in regions that are, and they'd like the LDS population be kind of like they'd be grouped together, like very concentrated in some areas and some in other ones. And so the mission had the option of, if you needed to be watched or if you needed to be taken care of, we can put you in a high densely populated area where you're near other missionaries and other companionships. And we can put you in a place where there's a lot of members and it's in a town or city. Or there's options too where if you need to be isolated and put somewhere else, there's that option too, where we can put you on the edge of the world and you're far away from anybody. And we can kind of forget about you for, 4.5 months to 6 months if we need to.
Interesting.
So,
Wow. It sounds very calculated. Honestly, I picture the mission president just going, yeah, the problem, he's out here. These guys need this. I mean, it just sounds very calculated.
I know from my mission, there's always the you always have some elders that are, they're just not all the way there, not playing, fully. You just know they're off. There's others where they come out normal, but the frustration and the constant knocking and nothing to do, they get depressed and they end up going home or coming back. What differentiated Tucson from, those others? I mean, it was just an inordinately high number, or was there incidences that just made it so obvious that what was happening?
So right when I got assigned to my companion and we were at that transfer site, there was a missionary who's notorious. He had a nickname um, that we had given him, and we'd always refer to him by that nickname. And he was kind of low functioning, but also kind of like psychologically disturbed on top of that. Um, I'm not entirely if you ask me what exactly what it was, I don't know if I could actually put a name to it, but
well, and you're a kid. I mean, that's the thing. You're a kid with,
very
and
really
as you
turned
get
19.
older and you look back, I do this with my college days and I think, oh, now as an adult, an older adult, I think my roommate, oh, I should have been kinder because I think she, now I can see it. But as a kid, you don't. You're just like, you're different, or this is affecting me. You don't look at it. And maybe you're not really capable of dealing with a lot of those things, a lot of those issues, where hindsight, you're older, you're like, wow, I probably should have had that person, go have a medical appointment, or I should have alerted somebody, but you don't do that when you're a kid.
Yeah, so you barely turned 19.
Yeah,
Mental health, I mean, wasn't really discussed in my family.
exactly.
LDS congregation, everything's all about image. Grew up in like the suburbs, kind of more like in a nicer place. So like you just didn't see that, or I didn't experience. So I didn't know anything about mental health, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like you hear about depression, but like I didn't know exactly what that looked like or felt. Um, so yeah, so this missionary, he's very tall, lanky guy, had a wild, like, really, wide eyes and kind of a crazed look to him, and kind of like you could tell that he couldn't really tell what reality kind of was. He was just kind of had this like gaze that kind of he wasn't present entirely.
And that's
And
heartbreaking. I'm sorry, that's heartbreaking to think of somebody that really needs help and more supervision, and they're just out there. I mean, that's terrifying for the person, and it's heartbreaking.
yeah. And my companion, again, who I grew up with in my home ward, he went and said, "Oh, hi, how's it going?" to this missionary, and because they had previously been companions, and so he was just saying hi to him. And so this missionary that we gave a nickname, he just went up and didn't even say anything. He just went up and picked up my companion around the waist and just lifted him up on the ground and just started screaming, just and then just set him down. And then just kind of like, and he got all really excited and kind of like, started like laughing. It's like that. And then he just kind of went away. Didn't even like say anything. And that was his way of saying like hello.
Yeah.
And and afterwards, I talked to my companion. I'm like, what was that? Like, what the heck is that? And they're like, oh, this, and the other missionaries around too. And they're like, oh, that's crazy so and so. And we also call him strangler so and so, because he has a tendency to strangle people when he gets upset. And he started just telling me stories about this guy. And this missionary, whenever he get upset, he had like and he was notorious for just strangling his companions or trying to strangle them.
Literally putting your hand, like literally. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And they're telling me stories. Like one time when they're uh when they're in a minivan, a mission vehicle, and he was in the passenger seat behind the driver, and the two elders up front, they were talking with each other, kind of loudly, and started, like laughing a bunch. And this troubled missionary, he he got upset because he thought that they were making fun of him or talking about him, and they were laughing at him, even though they weren't. They were talking about something entirely different. So they're not even sure how he came to that conclusion. But so he, like, without warning, his like, it's described to me where his hand just like slowly crept around the headrest of the driver, and then just clamped down really hard around his neck and just started just like shaking him while he's trying to strangle this missionary while he's driving. And so he's like trying to get, and he starts screaming while he's doing that. And the missionaries fighting for control of the car so they don't crash. And the other missionaries are trying to get him off him so he would stop strangling this guy. And and that's just like one story that that they told me. Like, he was just known for this. Like when he would do that, they're just kind of like, oh, he did it again type thing.
And the mission president knew this was going on, this kind of behavior. And I'm
Yep.
assuming probably the home bishop, when he sent him out, knew there were some issues. I mean, it just, it makes me think of a stake president that I had, that in talking to me and my kids about missions, told a story of how he was just a gung-ho missionary. He was my age, and he goes out there and he's given us a companion, which is a special project. It's a companion that functions about the age of a 6-year-old. But the companion's home ward had wanted him to go out. They'd worked really hard. The bishop had okayed him to go out. The stake president had okayed him to go out. And my stake president, as a young man, was thought to be a person on the mission that could help to sort of care for and, allow this person to have a mission experience at the level of a 6-year-old child, is how the mission president described it. And I was stunned at his brutal honesty when he was, and again, he was telling my teenage sons about missions. And he said that really affected me, sort of describing what I started to get depressed. Because he's a kid. He doesn't know how to deal with someone that is functioning at that level. But everybody was so excited for this missionary to be able to go out. And so my stake president felt like, I've got to do it. I've got to somehow try to navigate this, because everybody's counting on it. It's going to be an amazing story that he was able to serve. But it just became, he said, he just became completely despondent, completely depressed. Finally, tried to talk to the mission president. Oh, you can do it. And then finally it just got to a point where he said, I will not, I cannot, and the mission president said, well, we're going to have to send him home. I don't think there's anybody else that can help him. And he said, I don't care at this point. But it impacted his entire mission and even his life afterwards, because he felt like a failure. He felt, he dealt and wrestled with it for years, having this companion that needed help that he was not able to give at all. And he was not able to serve as a missionary as he thought he would. So again, I think there's the ward wants it to happen for somebody, the bishop, the stake president, you have this feeling that if you can get them out there, they're going to be okay. But out there, they're just going to be with another bunch of kids. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know, but it's heartbreaking for both people involved. So It just reminds me of that. I thought my stake president was really brutally honest. Like when you ever hear a story like that, right? It's always rah, rah, the mission. But no, he really kind of told it how it was. And it stuck with me. I mean, this was years ago that he told that. So, but they just want to, did you get that sense? Your mission president knows, but you want them here. You want this success story, even with their limited capabilities. But then what's the impact on the other elders?
Yeah. And the mission president was very aware of these events happening. The same missionary even strangled or tried to strangle a 5-year-old child who was a member, part of a member family. The child was acting out, being very loud in the lessons like that, and it triggered this, set this missionary off, and he started just put his hands around the neck of the kid and started to try to strangle him. But then his companion knew this was coming because he's seen it common enough that he's like, oh, this is starting to happen, and he ripped his hands off of him. And
again, not the job of an 18-year-old kid with no training to handle this. This is very disturbing for everyone involved, and terrifying and disturbing for the person with the mental health issues, and not safe either.
Yeah. And so, what was described to me, this is like, actually, like, I can tell stories about multiple missionaries like this, but this is kind of an illustration of what it was like whenever we told the mission president about this. But, the same, troubled missionary, he had a fascination in knives and collect knives. Even if they would confiscate it from him, he would still mysteriously get more, even though you're signed down from companion all the time. So they weren't sure where he was getting them from. But he would often like get upset with his companions and threaten to kill them, or try to like strangle them in their sleep. And so they would call the mission president saying like, hey, this guy is literally like threatening to kill me. And he's also tried to attack me numerous times. And he's done this to other people, including like that 5-year-old child. And the mission president was like, well, okay, yeah, he's done that before, but he hasn't successfully actually like really actually harmed anybody. And so we're just going to keep him here.
We got to keep him. Yeah, it's going to be fine. And with the Lord's help, and this is, I mean, it sounds like it was very concentrated in your area, but this reminds me of a kid in our stake who, and they tell it kind of as a, not humorous, but a wow story where same kind of thing. His companion, this is in South America, threatened to kill him, got a knife, chased him around the apartment. The kid in my stake locked himself in a bathroom, called for help, got transferred over to the mission office. And they're like, well, maybe just, open the door, try to work with him. He's got a knife. He's having a psychotic incident. These are two kids that are 19 years old. What do you, I mean, we're talking about life and death scenarios, and it's not safe for either one. The person having the mental health incident needs professional help right there. And the kid locked in the bathroom, he also needs help, and he will need professional help going forward. So I don't know what it is that it's just, and maybe again, it's the mission president himself doesn't fully understand what it means, maybe, and doesn't have experience with it. I mean, we did an episode with a mission nurse. It was a woman, she had just been called to be a missionary, and she was an actual nurse. Interestingly, the mission president's wife was actually the one that was in charge of health, who had no training. And then she would call, the mission nurse. And I mean, she talked about mental health support like nothing. Like we're talking one in a country. So in your mission, knowing that they're sending people who have special needs there, was there any extra support? That's my question. You'd think that there would be so much extra support if they know that they're sending people with these needs there.
Yeah, so we often ask that like to each other, why is this mission selected for this? And so the bogus reasons that we were given was that Tucson, Arizona, one of the sunniest missions in the world for the LDS Church. And so I think the sunny weather would help people.
Like the sun, actually, vitamin D.
And so it seemed like a little bit of an old-fashioned tactic for me, but then they also said that they had excellent mental health care acquired for missionaries there.
Okay.
But that was kind of like a running joke in our mission, because it was this one particular like psychologist, and he was a member, probably got some kind of gave some special deal to the church. That's kind of what was the rumor was. But he was this, very overbooked guy that anytime you went and saw him, we called him the crazy doctor. And so we have to make a trip to the crazy doctor, and we're all just kind of like, oh, cool, you guys get to have like kind of like a vacation for half the day. And so we go, you'd go see this guy, and your companion just wait in the lobby while your companion goes in there for like 30, 45 minutes, maybe. Oftentimes you just kind of give you a prescription that just kind of like lull you into like the next transfer. And you weren't seeing him regularly. It was just like, okay, it's to the point like, okay, you hit a breaking point, and you talk to the mission president or the mission president's wife, and then they would kind of let you go see him. But outside that, it wasn't like a regular, as far as maybe some missionaries did. I don't know. From what I saw, from my point of view, it just seemed like it was just kind of as needed basis. The mission president's wife was supposed to take care of, like the health and welfare of these missionaries. When I first got in there, there's about 400 missionaries here. And from what, a good mission friend of mine, he was talking with the mission president's wife, and she told him 90% of these missionaries are on some form of medication. And we kind of assumed that probably a majority of that's for mental health conditions. And so she was in charge of kind of regulating those prescriptions and managing that.
For 400, however many, 90% of 400 elders, when it's extremely important that they continue to take their medication. And sometimes people, if they get to a certain point, they don't think that they need to take it anymore. I mean, you need really close supervision in these situations. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we weren't given any supervision or help at all for medication monitoring or anything like that. It was, and anytime you really needed the mission president, unfortunately, anytime we saw her, towards the later half of my mission, this lady looked like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and she would kind of just be unavailable for extended periods of time, and then just kind of randomly show up again. And so she was kind of sometimes there, sometimes not, and and I had that. If you got an injury, you'd be lucky to really get any actually real medical attention. It's kind of like a common thing people talk about. But
was your mission president a mental health expert in any way, shape, or form? Was there special training in the zone conferences on how to deal with mental health, because obviously the companions are responsible for watching over the other companions, and that's a very challenging thing because it affects you as well as them.
We didn't get any special training at all. Our mission president, he worked for FEMA. He's one of like the head officials for FEMA and so he, as far as I knew, didn't have any medical background. Didn't seem like he did. And he kind of operated like a federal bureaucrat mindset, try to make everything really efficient. And he was very devoted to the church. And to the point that like we made like jokes or suspicions, like he's probably going to be like a member of the 70, like one day, like how devoted and unquestioning to the church was. Yeah. And so we didn't, if you got a companion who had a lot of problems, at most you might get like a couple statements from like your zone leader saying like, hey, this missionary has some, and it'll be vague, like, has some problems and conditions, and you're going to have to, part of your calling is to, part of your, this transfer is going to be to watch over him, take care of him. And I'll just leave it vague like that. In order to actually get like, who this person is, what are his problems, what are things you need to watch out for, what things you need to help him with, you'd have to go out yourself and just call previous companions or other missionaries that you knew of and talk to them. And so it's kind of more of like this rumor mill type thing that you kind of had to run off of and gather your own information to figure out what was going on or what to do. So, and oftentimes like some missionaries just had no idea and they'd walk in and have to figure it out themselves and stuff like that. But
yeah. I had one of these type of missionaries as a companion, and it did not go well. He was a convert. He'd been a Marine, and he was converted by sister missionaries, and he had this big thing for sister missionaries. He was a bigger guy. He always wore his aviator sunglasses, but I was at transfers the first time I met, when I went to have to pick him up, and I'd been out about 18 months or so when I had to go pick him up. And, he comes up and the first thing he says to me, I remember to this day, is he said, I can make a bomb with 2 cups of coffee and a battery. And I'm like, well, it's a good thing we've got the word of wisdom. We don't have a lot of coffee in the apartment, so I guess I'm safe,
But what is that supposed to mean, right? And how's that supposed to make you feel? Instantly unsafe. That's the thing. Instantly unsafe.
And he came and he had a bayonet from the bayonet he had from the Marine Corps. And
on the mission in Indiana,
he got mad,
he brought a bayonet.
He threw it. He didn't throw it at me. He threw it at the closet when he got mad, but it made this giant hole in the closet door. And I remember I only did one transfer with him. I know I got extremely. I was very mad at the mission president for putting me with this guy. I'd had an okay relationship with the mission president. Once he put me with this guy, I was like, what in the world did you do to me? Because it was so difficult to work with that guy. We went to a member's house and he hit on her. She was married and she was having problems with her husband, and he put his arm, he went up and hugged her and I'm like, oh, I think that's the thing that got me out of it was I called and said, this guy needs to get out of here now. And they transferred him out the next time. That's the only thing that saved me. But it was difficult. And I can't imagine if you had multiple people like that on your mission, because it was just, you just stopped functioning. You're like, I don't want to be around this person, and yet I have to be around them 24/7.
Yeah, you shut down, I would think. I mean, I didn't serve a mission, but I think about roommates at BYU. There were mental health issues, as you can imagine. And you do, when you feel like you're kind of living in this environment that you just can't get a handle on, you yourself start to change and to shut down too, until you get out of it. And then you look back and you think, what was that? And then you kind of get angry, and on a mission, you're forced to do this. As roommates, you can get away, you can talk to other people. A mission, you're there, and it can get darker and darker. And, I've had kids that have served missions and relatives that have served missions, and there have been scenarios, just to be vague, where because of that relationship between companions, it can get really dark, and you're together 24/7, and it can be extremely unhealthy when in any other part of your life you would remove yourself from that situation and go to another, you'd get some relief, but in this case you can't. And it's the idea, oh, we're companions, we can work this out, we're supposed to be together, God has blessed our companionship. No, that's kind of a recipe for disaster in some cases.
Yeah, and it created a lot of behavior problems in our mission quite a bit. And it would, you go to these like mission, like these mission conferences, zone meetings or conferences, whatever, and you would get these trainings, but I felt like this mission was more interested in converting the missionary than actually us doing missionary work. We're kind of, I feel like the church this time started going to defensive mode. I mean, this is the time where you had a lot of the transparency started coming out, and
That's true.
And so I could they were changing programs and kind of focusing. So whenever we do like missionary trainings, it was focused more on your obedience and your devotion to the church. What kind of member are you going to be when you return home? And the missionary training would kind of be on the side attached to that, but it was always focused on you. And so when we go to these like zone conferences and stuff, you would listen to like the most absurd talks and lectures for like hours, and it was always about like, like this is a very important, like this, you were on a mission, this is extremely important, you're doing the Lord's work, you're devoting your time to the work, this is a very special calling, you're representative of Jesus Christ, and they just kind of do that, and then they would talk about your obedience and achieving your own self-righteousness and piety, and how important this all was. And like all the time while you're sitting there, you're just like, I have a companion who's like threatening to kill me, or I have a companion who just like has some serious struggles. Like I'm just trying to like literally survive to the next day. And there's not a whole lot of mission work to do. And when we do that, it gets absolutely insane when we do try doing mission work. And we can get to those stories later. But it's and so you just start just despising the institution, despising the mission itself, because they're lecturing you, putting on this like facade, saying like you're supposed to be doing the Lord's work, and this is a wonderful, magnificent program. And you're sitting there like, I'm being like lied to straight in my face while I have a companion next to me, like, and I'm being ignored. Um, who who's very problematic, who tried to attack me or tried to sexually assault me, and I'm still being forced to be with this person. And um so missionaries would act out, or they'd stop caring about the rules. But there's a story in my article that I gave. One of my companions absolutely just despised the mission itself, and he just did not care. And he brought a Nerf gun to one of these zone conferences or mission conferences. And during one of these like rah rah speeches that they give, he was just to kind of mock the whole system and program what's going on. He pulls out a Nerf gun out of his suit jacket, and he reaches over and he aims for a particular missionary who's, um, you know, uh, very simple-minded and has mental health conditions and had a strong affection for dinosaurs like that. And it was, he was like 6 feet tall, really tall guy, and just very muscular. And so it was kind of like an odd combination, but and he was like really big into physical fitness, but he would actually turn into like a dinosaur whenever he get like really upset, and that was kind of like known, or like, and he's kind of like hard to control. And so this my
meaning he would take on kind of the persona of an animal, and he would, or interesting. Okay.
And so like my companion, knowing very well know what would happen if he did this, he went over, reached over, and he shot this missionary across the pews and shot him in the head with a Nerf dart. And this missionary just like erupted in a roar like a dinosaur, and then took one of the hymn books and just started, like, his hands like claws like a dinosaur, and started just shredding the hymn book. And like, just like a bomb went off in like the chapel, and like all the missionaries, like it just halted the whole meeting. It's like that. And so
then
like
everybody's triggered, right? Everybody's having reactions and emotional reactions, and it's just all, oh my
people are
God.
laughing.
And the guy knew by doing that. And how cruel, that's exactly. Oh my goodness. What a perfect storm.
And so we would kind of mock the mission openly like that, or like, And it was, very upsetting as a mission president, I can only imagine, but it was,
Yeah.
um, it was just maddening like that. It was just kind of chaos like that. And so,
And you mentioned
um,
in your post, well, I think one of the first lines that I read that struck me is how many people were sent home, while you were
mhm.
there. Just so many. I mean, I know that happens in every mission, but I mean, and most of these you're saying were elders that were just, I don't care anymore because I'm in complete chaos and I'm just going to just act out. And that's who is being sent home. What was the number? I can't remember. It was in the 50s or something, or you were
Yeah,
the
I was about the 54th, if I remember correctly, like about 54th missionary sent home early. I did it
from that mission.
voluntarily. And my mission president had been in that office calling for about 21 months. And so
54 missionaries in 21 months with
so
that mission president.
the turnover rate was really high. And we were kind of shielded from that. Like we had a decent idea because when people just randomly disappear. Um the but and everyone and like the mission president kind of like we could kind of tell he was kind of like engineering things to make it make these to silence and kind of cover up these situations and so that we weren't aware of it or members weren't aware of it or anything like that. And but that bar to get sent home was set very high. I don't know if it was intentionally or unintentionally, but it was set very high to get sent
Really?
home. I mean, you could just literally like try to sexually assault your companion, which happened to one of my companions, and um, like he was taking a shower, and his companion comes in. This mission companion is kind of like notorious, and he came in and tried to advance on him and tried to like basically sexually assault him, and he got away, but they called the mission president saying like, "Hey, this happened. I cannot be with him." And the mission president said, "Sorry, you're going to have to just still be with his companion and
Yeah.
just go out to the next transfer. We don't have a place for him right now. It'd be too
Yeah.
complicated. Emergency transfers cause me problems. You're just gonna have to be with them." And this particular missionary, who's my companion, who was the victim in this situation, he had some mental health conditions, and his mental health started just kind of, I could tell just he's really struggling by the time
Yeah.
I came along as companion because of events like this just stacked up on each other on top of the pressure of being a missionary, top of the pressure of being performing in this dysfunctional environment and trying to be perfectly obedient, living this lifestyle that's super harsh. Like you're basically living your life as like a medieval monk, essentially, like I'll reject all worldliness.
Yeah. And this is the
Yeah.
era, of course, when now missionaries can call home, fairly
Hmm.
frequently. You're really not set apart from your family anymore. But back then, and I'm guessing these people, everybody in your mission, you don't write home about this stuff. You don't say, Mom and Dad, I'm spiraling and this is happening. You do not say that. You do what happens in the mission stays in the mission. You are alone. You are isolated from your support system completely.
Yep. The mission would, tell us, we'd get reminders saying like, "Hey, don't talk about it. We're having problems because of that."
Wow.
Probably because parents are hearing the truth and like what is going on. But
Yeah.
and also I didn't talk about it because I didn't even know how to describe it to my family. I didn't think they'd even believe me.
Yeah.
A lot of these situations.
Well, and that reminds me of at the
Yeah.
beginning of your article, which I'm going to link in the show notes, you talk about driving with a friend from the mission and just sort of maybe just mention that for a second, discussing back and forth. Like, was that real? Did that happen? And you both realized. I mean, I thought that was a very powerful way to start the article about that because you do hold things inside. Everybody does. And then you run into somebody from the past and you're just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. We were on a car ride together about 3 hours total. And we were
And this is
talking
how much longer after the mission was this?
10 years.
So yeah, so this is 10 years after, and you're with a friend from the
And
mission.
yeah. And we're talking about, because we're both married, kind of the first stages of our marriages.
Mhm.
And we're starting to realize that now that we have spouses, that things that we didn't realize that were problematic with our reactions to things, how we think about things, how we talk about things, that we actually have problems. And a lot of it's alluding to trauma, basically. And we kind of ignored it, we hid it, we suppressed it for years. And not until you finally get married, those start to reveal itself, and your spouse is like, "Hey, that was weird," or like, "Hey, that's not
Mhm.
okay," or like, there's something odd going on right here. Why do you keep talking about your mission so much all the time?" And so in one way or another, he and I both ended up in therapy, like talk therapy, and we're talking through things. And we were both kind of talking about our experiences with that because we both, and he said, we both know that we're in therapy. And we started talking about it. We both admitted that we talk about our missions quite a lot. And we both found that interesting. And we both, and I started asking him like, hey, when things like, do you end up like when you go about your day, you don't even, and you just see something and it just kind of triggers a memory from the mission, and it just kind of affects your whole attitude and the way that you think for the rest of the day or for hours afterwards. And he kind of agreed that, it kind of does happen. And we were kind of being um haunted by reminiscing all the time from the mission itself. And both of us had left the church or in different stages of leaving the church or disassociating with it. And it was like the church was kind of coming out from the grave and kind of haunting us still. And it was affecting and we realized it's kind of our mindset too. Like it's the way that we think about ourselves, the way we think of situations. And like I've came to a realization while we were talking that the church structured our minds in a way that when we're on this mission, they kept telling us like what you're seeing is normal, what you're seeing is acceptable, and and this just happens. And many are called through a chosen type of speech. And it basically they kind of put in your minds that if you're questioning what's going on, the problem is you, not the church. And you just need to be better and do better. And you're just thinking negatively. And the adversary is working really hard on you right now, that it's going to be that, these are just bad thoughts you're having. That's not of God or anything like that. And so you're not really allowed to self-reflect. They kind of like, I feel like these tactics of control that they put on us just did not allow us to self-reflect what's going on. And I think we've been conditioned like that since we were kids, thinking about what a mission should be like, this romanticized idea, you're trying to fit that and match that so your family can be proud of you, so you can go back to a culture that would accept you. And so we just didn't think about it. We just kind of like saw this chaos around us, and we're just kind of like, oh, we'll just kind of, it is what it is, and we'll just kind of move on. And the problem is a lot of these events were traumatic, both with not just missionaries itself, but also we were kind of exposed intentionally to trauma. I feel like these experiences that anytime you talk about like, hey, we're in a dangerous situation, or we keep having dangerous instances happen in this area, you wouldn't get a whole lot of sympathy. I mean, having traumatic experiences on the mission was like, it was a feature, not a bug. It's they kind of expected you to have those experiences as like some kind of spiritual building. And so if you ever did talk to your mission president, complain about it, you wouldn't get any sympathy. You just get a lecture in return. And it would just kind of make you feel like you were just a complainer or just had a negative mindset, or you just weren't doing good enough. And so we just didn't really talk to our mission president about it, even though we had our life threatened or had terrible things happen to us. We just didn't want to talk to him about it. Neither did we want the attention. It'd be like having the eye of Sauron on you and the mission. If you start talking to him, that you didn't want, anytime he kind of came up with an idea of things or had a particularly troubled missionary who needs to be emergency transferred out because something terrible happened, you didn't want to be the missionary on his mind to receive that missionary, or like you didn't.
You just lay low.
You just lay low.
Out of, But then you mentioned in your article that you did finally start raising, actually speaking about it where almost nobody else would. And you did sort of start bringing it up.
I did, and it's because I was a ghost in the mission. Other missionaries knew of me, but I had some kind of reputation, I remember getting a phone call. I was in Gila Valley, Arizona. And I was with one missionary who's like notoriously disobedient. He wasn't doing like awful things. He just did whatever he wanted to do. He still kept the standards of the church, but he was just notorious for that. I just kind of let him do whatever. And I didn't really care. If he wanted to go out 10:30 that night and go play basketball at the college nearby, I don't really care. But I'll probably just go with him, put on normal clothes, and just go watch him play basketball. So anyway, I was with back painting, and the mission president calls us at like early in the morning, and um, he's like, Elder, of all missionaries in this entire mission, I know the least amount about you.
Hmm.
And I'm driving down from Tucson over to you, which is like 2.5 hours, to meet with you right now, just so I can get to know you. Basically, I was like a ghost on his records, and I intentionally did that. I just flew way under the radar. Never wrote him. You're supposed to write your mission president every P day, once a week. I haven't done it in like 8 months or something like that
You
point. I just
didn't
didn't,
do it. Wow.
because I thought this whole mission was absurd. And there was no I had my life endangered so many times that I'm like, I really do not care about. I just trying to survive and get to the end of this. I really just don't care, because going home early, which just wasn't an option.
Yeah.
So he came and he met with us, and my companion's just like, he's like, oh, dude, what did you do? Like, what did you do to trigger this? I'm like, I don't know, because he thought did something, got caught in doing something wrong in the past, and then was catching up with me. But no, so I had an hour and a half long conversation with my mission president, and it ended up being an argument back and forth, because I said, hey, this mission is like, something's wrong. Like, there's like, we're really like, the mission work to be done is so difficult to do. I mean, the statistic that we got from the mission office was that um, the average lessons to an investigator, so someone investigating the church, was 0.75 per companionship per week for the entire mission.
So
It was
not even
just,
a whole discussion.
no.
Is that worse than Indiana, Landon, back in your day?
That's about, we'd go a
Nobody.
week or so without teaching anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's frustrating when that's the whole purpose that you're there for, and you're not doing it.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Yeah. So,
Yeah. And so I kind of basically said, like, hey, a lot of these rules are kind of ridiculous. A lot of the programs being put on us are kind of ridiculous, all the surveillance stuff that they're initiating at this time. And I said, like, it's not making missionaries better. It's actually making us all worse. We're kind of breaking under the pressure. And some missionaries are going absolutely insane with this and turning into like literal Pharisees and kind of adding their own rules and inflicting on other people to kind of counteract the mission culture.
Yep.
And I said, like, the morale is like just rock bottom. Everyone hates each other. And we have no respect for leadership in this mission, for like their district leaders and zone leaders, mission and assistants of presidents. And I said, like, there's something wrong. Like, there's some, I'm struggling to find satisfaction in my mission, basically, and I'm struggling to even finish it, and this, I was about like a year out at this point. And my mission president just kind of laid into me, and he kind of like, we just kind of like got this like verbal sword fight pretty much back and forth. I feel like, no, what you're thinking is wrong. That's not correct. And he started bringing just gaslighting the heck out of me and just saying, like, no, you're not thinking correctly, and you need to think about it completely different. You need to restructure and dedicate yourself. And if you do have, and if there really are problems, just like, you know, just do the work and just forget about everything else and just do the work. And I'm just kind of like, oh my God, I feel like I wasn't being heard. And so I just finally kind of gave up in that conversation. And but that put me on the radar. After that, I was trying so hard to put it under the radar, but now that put me near the top of it. And so that relationship was kind of troubled between me and my mission president from then on till the end. And so it was, so I feel like I didn't have any support. It made me feel even more alone and isolated at that point.
There's
And
nobody that you can count on. So, I mean,
yeah.
was there an incident that finally triggered it's time to go home, or was it just how did it happen that you ended up leaving?
Yeah, so I was in Deming, New Mexico, basically on the edge of the world, and I didn't even feel like I was even the United States. It was um, not a whole lot of, there's like no missionary going on, but it was just that it was like basically like the two families. There's two wards there, and the bishops in both wards kind of also ran the town itself. Like they kind of were those families that kind of ran the town, the small towns. So you could just never escape that place. But um yeah, the like I was already just thoroughly despising mission. I was in like just in survival mode, and my mental health was just terrible. Like I had uh bad depression, but I didn't recognize what it was because I had no idea. I had bad anxiety, but I didn't know that's what it was. Um And, and you kind of like blame yourself for why the mission isn't the way it is. But the moment that really just like this, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. Is when this freaking guy from the ward who's LDS, he was aspiring really hard to get into church leadership in the congregations there, and like the wards of the stake. He'd even like you go into his house and he'd have it like outlined um on a board in his like office like that. Like you can see his clear goals of how he's going to do it. And so he came up with this idea to make like 50 something gift baskets for Christmas to deliver to less active families. And he's going to do that just to kind of put himself on the radar for the church, that he's going above and beyond. And so he calls us because he wants us there probably for his little PR stunt. And so he calls us, and this guy was crazy. And like he called us and he said like, "Hey, I want you to go do this with me Christmas Day. I want you to do this in the evening." And we're like, and this is like a handful of days before, like 5 days before, and we're like, "Sorry, we're already like booked out to like meet with the bishop and have dinner with his family. They invite us over with their family to have Christmas with them essentially in the evening." And this guy just like screams at us and like how we're just like ruining his plans, and like how missionaries have always helped him in the past like that. And he hangs up, calls us again, screams us some more, hangs up, calls us again, screams at us, and then like we're finally like, "Okay, fine, we'll just go with you for like an hour or two, and then we've got to go. You got to let us go." I'm like, he's like, "Okay." So he comes by, he picks us up in his van, his like utility van. We get in the back of it, and he shuts the door. And where he doesn't even like, there's no seats back there, so he literally just opens up the back, and it's just like all these gift baskets, and it's just like an like an empty utility van. And says like, "All right, get inside, just jump in the back." And we're like, "Okay." So we get in the back, and he shuts the doors, and he gets to the front of the cab, and like very within the first 30 seconds, like I'm looking around. So this whole interior of the van is like caged. And inside, it's all like metal cages installed inside this thing over the windows, over the front cab. All the door handles are completely removed on the inside and covered over. And we're like, we can't get out. Like this is like a caged van. Like he modified it specifically to like nobody like so you can get it, you can get out. And um he kind of had the cab, he had like a little small window to the cab and stuff like that, but it was like a big cage over and stuff like that. And so we're like, "What in the world?" And so my companion, I remember his eyes when he looked at me, he realized the exact same thing. He just looked at me with big eyes, like, "Oh my gosh, like we're stuck and we can't get out." And there was some PEEP members in this area who warned us, saying like, "Hey, do not trust people here. There are people on the cartel payroll, and cartel is a big problem for us." We did have missionaries had run-ins with them, but um, saying people are on the payroll of cartel. They'll be either like drug mules or they do human trafficking, pull people from over the border. So a lot of these restaurants are all fronts for the cartel for money laundering. Do not trust people. Like ordinary people you think are nice like that are doing work for the cartel on the side. And we're like, "Okay." And that conversation just kind of flashed back to me. I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, is this guy doing human trafficking? What is he doing with his van?" And so while we're driving, he just kind of like doesn't talk to us, and he has like this really angry face on, like angry demeanor on him. And we're
Which
dropping
is
off.
great for Christmas, right? You're drifting off gift baskets and you're in a van where you're trapped and there's somebody who's really angry driving. This is like the world of Bizarro.
I
Seriously.
get the feeling his heart isn't going to grow two sizes that day.
Nope.
That's
And
terrifying. You have like fight or flight when you find yourself in a scenario where you're like, "This is wrong. I'm not supposed to be here." And it seems normal, but you can't convince me it's normal. And you just have that internal struggle and fight or flight. So, oh my God, how what a scary situation.
yeah, and so there's two sleeping bags in there, like for us, and then like some bottles of water. And so like we just kind of like we're only supposed to do this like an hour or two with this guy. We're like, is he preparing something more that we're going to be spending the overnight or something like that? And so we started just delivering to like a handful of people, and we're like you can look south and look into Mexico, like that's how close we are. And it's at night, overcast, very dark, dirt roads, and we're just like where you could, yeah, something's wrong.
You could disappear, honestly. But did he let you out to walk out to a porch and deliver a basket?
Yes.
But at that point, didn't you feel like saying, you know what, we're good? But then again, you're out in the middle of nowhere. So what do
Yeah.
you do? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So we were like way isolated. And yeah, so we just kind of went along with it for like an hour and a half. And then
Yeah.
after that, we are just kind of like talking to this guy. We're like, hey, so we gotta
Yeah.
go. And he just didn't respond. And we just keep driving. We're heading like south towards Mexico. And we're
Oh
like,
my
and we're
gosh.
like, we gotta go. Like, we're like, and we're just, and Mike Bain's like, hey, the bishop is expecting us. We have an
Right.
appointment with them.
Right.
They are expecting us, and we'll know, and they won't be like it if we're late, and will check up on us probably. And like, this guy doesn't even like say anything. It just kind of like turns around and starts heading back into town. It's like that. We're just like, and then just like doesn't even say anything to us. Like he's barely even talks to us the whole experience. And then it just kind of like drops us off at the bishop's house and just drives away without saying anything. We're just like, did we just almost get like human trafficked or something? Like, what was that? Like, I don't even, it was like this weird merge of like, yeah, we're doing like missionary work for like to do stuff for the board. But like, I felt like there was something
Yeah. Trust your
more
gut, trust your
intentions
gut.
in there.
And probably the fact that you
Was
said we are expected somewhere, they know we're coming and they will check on us. That could have an impact. Yeah, you know what? Trust your gut. You're told not to, but you know when there's something wrong. So that is a terrifying story.
Yeah, and so that was like the last straw for me. I mean, it's like
Really.
I've been held at gunpoint. I've been like briefly detained by Border Patrol and got caught in one of their traps. I've had to like talk someone out of murder. I've had to like I've seen people like like almost OD on like heroin while we're teaching them, and among other things that are just so graphic to describe that. And I've been chased, and there was like a mission stalker that stalked all of us, and we had to like and paranormal stuff was very prolific in this mission too. We had a lot of problems with that. And so I was just like, this is the last straw. Like I'm trying to do missionary work, like my mission president's telling me to do, and it's this garbage. It's these sketchy situations. And if I tell him about it, he won't care. And um, so that was pretty much the last straw. I did wait like a couple weeks and like, is this gonna improve? Maybe I can just kind of like just kind of cruise and just try to make it this last like 4 months, 4.5 months.
So you were
And
close. You were really close at this point, but you're just like,
yeah,
that's it. You knew that you'd hit your limit. You knew.
yeah, and I was like, it was getting to the point that like like death was welcoming at this point, like as a welcoming destination. Like it was so bad that I'm like, I can't do this anymore, and I started frightening myself. Like,
Yeah.
um, I what did it was I saw a former companion of mine. He was in the same zone, and we were at like a zone meeting or a zone conference, and I look over at him, and like this guy just looks absolutely like just dead. Like he's just no expression, just super depressed. We like the mission president gave a prayer and stuff like that. And like I'm sitting, it got to the point like you just don't even react. Like you don't even like close your eyes, bow your head, or fold your arms. Like
Mhm.
you're just kind of sitting there, just not even engaging, even in the prayer itself. And I like look over at my former companion, he's doing the exact same thing. And I'm just like, something's like we're both like I looked at him I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm doing the exact same. Like he looks frightening, and like I can't even recognize him. And I can tell just based on his attitude that like that's not him, and he's in a very dark place. And I realized like that's me. Um and so I was getting frightened about my mental health. And like there have been missionaries who attempted suicide on this mission,
Mhm.
self-harm. And yeah, and I didn't want to go down that road. I didn't think I was, but I didn't want to test those boundaries for even just for those last 4 months. And so I called, I didn't even trust this, how much little I trusted my mission president. I just straight up called my dad. Just took our area phone,
For
walked outside.
you, for those of you that are not never Mormons watching, to be able to do that in that era, you don't call. You do
No.
not call. So for Tanner to be able to do that I mean, back me up on this, right, Landon? This is huge that you would call home. This is a giant step to be able to do that because it's against all mission rules.
Oh yeah, like they isolate you, and it's kind of for a control tactic in my opinion.
Mhm.
But yeah, and so yeah, you're not supposed to talk to your family like that outside of like Mother's Day and Christmas. But
Yep.
Um, so I called my dad. I just had his phone number memorized, and so I called it, and he's like, "Hello, is this?" And then I'm like, "Dad, it's me." And he was immediately shocked and also very frightened because like this does not happen. If
Right.
you're son on a mission is calling you, something's seriously wrong. Like
Mhm.
this is not supposed to happen. And I told him basically saying my mental health is this mission is terrible. I couldn't even really describe, I didn't even know how to describe it because
Yeah.
like that mental block is put in my mind where I'm just conditioned to not even really just like I don't even, the words aren't even there. Just all these emotions are pouring out, but like I don't even know how to describe it. And I said, this mission is terrible. We're not doing missionary work, even if we want to. It's like my life is just being endangered here. And there's um and this mission is just really toxic. We're not, and I'm like, my mental health is just going to really dark places, and I just can't be here anymore. And he's just like, well, how about you got 4 months left? Like, just how about you if you
Yeah.
just push it? And I'm like, Dad, I don't even know if I can do that. Like, it's, and he's like, well, I want you to read the Book of Mormon, and see if that will help type thing. And I'm like, that those platitudes don't work on me. I've been doing trying to do that to me for like 20 months now. It doesn't, this is way beyond that. And so my dad's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna call your mission president and see what's going on. And because he asked me, like, you talk to mission president, I'm like, no, I don't want to talk to him. Like, he doesn't listen. And so I'm like, you what? Like, and so he's like, well, how about if I just call you mission president? I'm like, you do that because you'll probably see what I'm talking about. And so he called my mission president, and then he calls me back like the next night, and my dad did. And he was just like, hey, I just talked to your mission president. He's like, what in the world is going on down there? He just told me that he sent home like over 50 missionaries home early. And then if he sent you home early, it'd be like his 54th. He's like, that is insane. He's like, asked me like, how long have you been a mission president? I'm like, well, about 21 months. And he's like, what? And though he's like, there's a serious problem. He's like, that's a high
Wow.
rate of turnover rate. He's
He
like,
saw
that's,
it.
yeah, he immediately saw. He's like,
Wow.
that's
Good for
unheard
your
of.
dad. I love your dad, and I haven't even met him because other dads might just say read the dang scriptures, but he saw it. That's awesome. Hero of the story.
Yeah. And so, and he said like, okay, well, like your mission president China wants you to stay. And he kind of gave me some ideas because it's like, yeah, I understand you're having a really difficult time, but it's like, can we actually just the next week or so, like, let's just try to work through things, and you'll talk to the mission president, and I'll talk with him, and we'll kind of, figure things out, and I'll check up on you type thing. And I'm at least, and then like the transfers are coming up. They're trying to like transfer me with another missionary that I'm like, I've like this missionary I already got in a fight with verbally, and because we just didn't get along in real life. Outside of mission, we probably would have been friends actually, but like in the mission itself, I was in a very bad place. I was swearing at
Yeah.
people. I was yelling at people.
Yeah,
I
everyone
hated,
has the worst behavior because it's such a pressure cooker. That's exactly it. Yep, I've heard the story many times.
and yeah, I was just not. And so like, and I got an verbal altercation with this guy. And so like, I was like, this would not be good. Like this would put me over the edge. So I told the mission president, I'm like, hey, I want out. I don't want to be transferred. I don't want to be with that guy either. I want out of the mission. And he kind of just again just got into that just kind of started that sword fight with me. Just kind of like, no, you should stay. And like you know, and I got so frustrated with it. And it got to the point that like after that conversation with him, like it didn't really go anywhere. Like he was just kind of like, well, just kind of like, I'll call you in a few days type thing and check up on you. It got to the point I'm like, I don't think they're listening to me. I think they're going to try to make me stay here. And I was just like, if this next conversation I have with my mission president, if he does not allow me to go home, I'm literally just going to take the mission vehicle that we have in Deming, New Mexico, and I'll literally just like leave my companion behind and just I'll just wake up early in the morning, throw all as much stuff I can into the truck, and then just drive to Phoenix, where my family had moved to. I was on a mission.
Wow. So your family was very close at this time. You left from another
Hmm.
state, but I mean, you're right there. They could
Yeah,
come drive down and get you if they
they could.
understood the scenario. I'm sure they would.
Yeah, it would have been like probably like a 6 hour drive to go to
Yeah.
Phoenix from here. But I was like, I'll just use. I already had printed off the directions to
Oh,
get to where my family was living at. I'd never been there before, but like I knew the address from their letters, and so I had to print it out on paper because I didn't have access to the internet to maps me back and stuff. So I already had to print it out, and I was ready to go. And I just called my mission president saying like, hey, if he just denies, I'm gone. Like I'm just going to drive and just quit this mission. and we'll steal the mission vehicle, drop it off at a temple or something. I don't know. Like we'll just like I don't know.
You
Let's
had
give
it
it back to
planned
them.
out.
Yeah.
Abandon
Landon,
it at
did
the
you ever
temple.
plan a getaway like that from Indiana? That would have been a longer drive back
Oh,
to
there
you.
was many times I thought about all I got to do is get in the car and drive west. I'll be home in a day or two. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, my mission president called me and he said like no, I think it was actually my dad who called me. It was my dad who called me and he said, "Hey, I just talked to your mission president and I know that you still want to leave. He will allow you to go home really, and it'll be an honorable discharge for mental health reasons." And I said, "Yeah, I'm taking it. I'm gone. I can't do this anymore." And then I called my mission president after that. And he kind of challenged me on some things and stuff, but he said like, "Okay, well, like this next transfer is coming up. We'll just drive you to the mission office in Tucson, Arizona, and your family will just be there to pick you up." And I'm like, "Okay." So I got picked up by the missionaries there in Deming, and that companion I just talked about, my previous companion, that where I was at that zone conference, and I look over at him, and he's just like not even participating in the prayer, just looked at. He was in the car too, and he looked at me. And he's just like, "Hey, I heard you're going home," and I'm like, "Yep," and he's like, "So am I." And
Wow.
and we're just like, we can't do this anymore.
Wow.
Most missionaries are very like most missionaries were they're very quiet because it's like a big shame to go home early, even though like we know this is dysfunctional. We celebrate when people go home because they made it, and like it was still just like that negative culture just still crept in back our minds. That was a kind of a shameful thing. For me, I was telling everybody I was going home early and why, and I was telling everyone how toxic this mission was and how broken it was, and I'm just like, I
Really?
want out. And because people were asking me like, "Hey, where are you getting transferred?" I'm like, "No, I'm going home and here's why." And so yeah, we're driving back, and he's going home early too. And we get back to the mission office, and while I'm in the mission, I'm like, I have that final last interview with my mission president, and my stuff is just stacked away in the corner, and my family's on the other side of the door. I haven't seen them in like over 20 months.
So they came to get you.
They drove from Phoenix down to Tucson.
Pick you
Yep.
up. Okay. Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And my parents, both my sisters are there, and they're waiting for me on the other side of the door. And I'm just like, my mission president, and I feel like I was condemning my soul at this point. You know, I was like just disobeying God at this point, of rejecting him because I'm going home early. But inside me saying like, I can't do this anymore. So we're gonna have to figure this out with God and just figure out later. My mission president basically said like, "Hey, is there anything else you want to talk about?" I'm like, "No, I really don't. Like, we've had these arguments, we've had these engagements. I just can't stand this mission anymore." And I said, "I just can't. I don't like what's happening here. I don't like what the church is doing to us here." And the my mission president said like, "Hey, do not talk about what you saw here. I know you saw and heard and saw bad things that happened here that would make the church look bad. Do not talk about it when you go home.
Don't ever go on a podcast."
Yeah, exactly.
Or make a post on ex-Mormon Reddit.
Exactly.
Or write an article in Medium.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay. And he's trying to get me to sign papers. Like it's that stupid packet that they're like, is all these like goals. Pretty much like I don't know how long they did this, but they're trying to get other missionaries to do this too. But it's pretty much like writing all these goals and kind of professing your allegiance to the church. So when you'd go home, you'd have all these goals, and then you'd sign it, and you'd have to meet up with the mission leader, church leader, after you go home, and go back and forth and see where you're at and tracking and making sure that you're going to stay a member of the church essentially. Because a lot of us were going inactive when we went home, and I just refused to sign it. I'm like, I'm not signing this. I'm not filling it out. I'm not signing this at all. I don't even know what's inside that packet. And by extension, they're kind of telling me like, don't talk about what you saw, and they kind of alluded to like, this is also attached to that.
Wow.
That
like
paper
an NDA kind of a thing. The church loves their NDAs.
I don't know if it was in there or not, but like it was just by implication, just kind of like that's kind of part of it. But I'm like, no, I'm not signing this. And so they let me go, and I opened the door and see my family there for the first time, that time. And I got in the car with them, and I was in absolute shell shock. It was like I left a nightmare, like some psychological horror that I felt like I could never escape. And suddenly I just somehow removed myself and I'm back in reality again. And I was in shock and I couldn't barely even engage in conversation with my family. My family was pretty concerned. They didn't understand what happened. Even my
Right.
dad, when he tried to talk, he knew that there was problems, but they didn't really know what was going on. And I couldn't even begin to describe what it is I had seen, what it is I heard, what things I experienced, things I had done. And, it's like I feel like I could tell them every single thing, but I don't think they would even understand a word of
Mm-mm.
it because it was just so bizarre, so graphic, so contradictory what the image of the church puts on for missions and what missionaries do.
It's probably like, being a veteran coming back from service and you can't explain it to somebody. There's no way they would understand. Someone else might
Yeah,
who've gone, to war, but you can't understand it. Did they sense a big difference in you? Were they concerned? I mean, I'm just thinking about myself as a mom, seeing my son like that, even not even understanding what he'd gone through, but I'm sure they could sense a difference. I would be really concerned.
they were. Well, one more thing before I forget about it, I think this kind of illustrates the church in a way, was that my mission president told me, and I think he told this to my dad too, but he told this to me saying that, of all the missionaries I'd some early before you, which includes your, you know, people who try to take other people's lives, try to take their own lives, uh, sexual predators, child predators, sexual assault, you know, just all the crimes you can think of. It happened. Things that you should be arrested for had happened. Not the whole pool of 54 missionaries, but like a decent chunk in there was like that. And also just people with very tragic endings that they're just kind of hiding. And he said that of all those missionaries that I'm sending home, you're the one that's the most difficult for me, and you're the one that's um, you're the most troubling for him. And it was just because and the only reason the reason he gave me is because he's like, there's so much potential for you. I
Hmm.
feel like you could be into leadership and you could do all this stuff. I'm like, I only had 4 months left. I'm like, if you were going to do that for me, you would have done that like months ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but in my mind, I could tell why I was troubling is because I questioned the mission itself and the actual like ethics of what was
Hmm.
going on and the purpose of it. And I was going home because I disagreed with it. And I was willing to speak out about it. And this wasn't a person he can send home really quietly. I kind of like took that away from him. And and so in my mind, that just shows you where like the church was putting, instead of taking care of its people and its members, and it's actually trying to like, actually heal people, it was putting its image first. I felt like I don't know if that's exactly their intentions or not, but that's what it just looks like it appears like to me. And that they're just perhaps covering things up. They didn't want to send people home early because they didn't want people to talk about it. They didn't want to see this like disaster of a mission that was occurring down here. And so yeah, they just told me not to talk about it. And yeah, well, my dad was particularly really concerned about me because he could see my just like I was just mentally shattered.
Hmm.
And I took like a couple months of a break, not doing a whole lot. And
And you were
before I
20 at
started,
this time. You were
I
20,
was
just turned 20
yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
I was
Because you waited, you went
20
when you were 19, and so you were 20.
was
Okay.
20. And I left just at the beginning of 2016. Um, and I took like a couple months of just not even looking for a job because I had school waiting for me that I was just going to jump back into. So I had that foundation set up for me. Thankfully, I did
Mhm.
that. Um, so the expectations like I'd work for the summer and save up for college and go back. But yeah, I just during those, I think particularly when like a general conference rolled around in April, um, they turned on the TV and had the general authorities on there to give their talks. I immediately walked out. And they were living at a nice apartment complex this time with a very big pool, fancy hot tub, and stuff like that. And so I just went outside, put on my swimsuit. When they turned that TV on, I put my swimsuit on, grabbed a book, and I just walked outside and I just went to the pool. And I just waited there for a couple hours until I knew general
Wow.
conference would be done. And at that time, I could tell my dad was really concerned because in a way that was kind of like symboling like I don't even want to, I can't stand the
Right.
institution.
Can't even hear it. Yeah.
I can't stand it. I hated the institution. Still believed in the theology of it at the time, but hated the institution. I knew it was all facade, what they're trying to do. Quorum of the 70 would come down and talk to us mission people from the mission office headquarters would come down and talk to us, and it was just vile. Like some of those people were just really disgusting people to me, and because they're also like the architect of like this psychological horror, I felt like, and so um and some of the behavioral programs they're kind of testing on us at the time too, just kind of more on the trainings and the surveillance and everything they're trying to do.
Mhm.
And so I didn't want anything to do with the church institutionally. And so I walked out. My dad was really concerned after that, and he started to try to talk to me. I tried to explain. I started talking to him, opening up a little bit, like, "Hey, this is kind of the reasons why I left." And problem was like that mental block of not talking bad about the church. Um, Missions are supposed to be good, like those thoughts and ideas are there, and so that put a mental block. And it's like I had all these emotions, I couldn't even describe it, and so like I still tried to talk to my dad about it, and I couldn't get the words out properly. I could just tell him these random stories and he'd be like in shock, like, "Oh my gosh, what are you talking about? It's like disturbing." But, um, and my family never shamed me. They never felt like I
Oh,
was a dishonorable missionary.
I'm
They
so
were just,
glad.
they were just really concerned about what had happened to me and what I felt about the church. And, and, um, yeah. And then when I got home too, and I didn't want anything to do with the church leadership there in Phoenix
Mm.
either. And they could see that too. And it's troubling to them because when I came back and they released me as a missionary and I met the stake president, the stake president had that same stupid packet saying like, "Hey, why didn't you sign this? I
Oh,
want you to fill it out." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this thing's following me." But I'm like, and
yeah,
he's like, "Again, I heard that you saw things and that we don't want you talking about it."
really tried to
Yeah.
lock you down again, that we're just not going to mention this. Oh my
And
goodness.
he's like, "I want you to fill this out so we can meet regularly, like frequently, so that we can track your, progress and your spiritual progress of the church and membership and activity in it." And I was like, "I'm not doing any of that. I'm not saying any of that at all." They didn't give me the ability to speak, as like welcome home talk. I don't know if they do that for people who come home early, even honorably, but they quickly told me like, "You're not doing that. You're not talking about that at all. Like you're not gonna get a chance to talk about your mission." And I'm like, "Okay," but I was just kind of shamed into silence after that. Even like that, even though I was back at a ward that nobody knew me, like even at a YSA ward, nobody knew me, but like just like trickles came out, the people kind of start connecting pieces like, "Oh, he came home early" type thing. So I had that like negative connotation, that cultural shame
And that
um
did exist
creeped
10
in.
years ago. I mean, I think
Yeah,
now it doesn't because everybody comes home. I'm not
yeah.
kidding. When someone goes out, you're like, I have a feeling, so many people do. But back then, 10 years ago, it really didn't happen very much. It really didn't. So,
Yeah. And I was tearing myself up, and because I felt like, perhaps if this was my fault, even like these terrible things that happened, even if it was like, the guy trying to kidnap us or just like the crazy events that happened, I'm like, perhaps maybe that was somehow my fault. So maybe
mhm.
the reason why this mission ended up this way is because we were problematic as a body of missionaries. And it never occurred to me at the time that perhaps it's the church that like they engineered this medical mission. Maybe that's actually the real problem and what they're trying to do to us and what they're trying to inflict on us.
Do you know how much
But
longer that went on? I mean, I would think if it's a test case, 54 missionaries in 21 months, and who knows how many before that, it was a failure. Did they try to continue it? Did it disband? I mean, what's the history behind that?
no idea.
Wow.
It did continue for a couple years afterwards because I knew some missionaries that came out of it that I was friends with, and they're telling me the same stories, and they come out
Really?
just more or less the same into like 2018.
Uh-huh.
I kind of lost track of the mission after that. So I'm not sure if it's still like that or not. If they're still running that program, they did come out service missions or kind of expanded that program later
Exactly.
on. I didn't know if Arizona Tucson Mission had like its failures, if that played a role in why they did those more more comforting, mission service mission programs
Yeah.
that accommodate those things a lot better. I don't know, but I do think it's a better alternative. I do think the mission program in general is unethical, but it does bring into questions of what the ethics of the church, what they were trying to do there. I don't know exactly what it is. It does not look good from my point of view. It seems like a containment program of a mission that they're trying to protect their image. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But from the information that we were given, it did seem like it was sanctioned from people on high that people with mental health conditions get sent there, or troubled missionaries, they get sent to Tucson. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you want me to continue with what happened to me after that, but it's
yeah, give us a little synopsis of that, because I mean, I just, the story is heartbreaking, but not surprising, and you hear even today, I mean, to me, it's always so shocking how the personality of a missionary seems to change so much. And I've seen some very dark examples, even in just receiving letters, being on emailing lists and stuff like that, and going, okay, there's something wrong here in what they're saying, the words they're using. I remember one person started writing only in scripture, like making up their own scripture.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, there's all these tactics that your mind does when you're young like that, trying to compartmentalizing what's happened and trying to survive. But yeah, and there's so many stories. I mean, I can't share. I don't know if you felt that way on your mission, Landon. I know you said you had a big chart where you were just marking off the days because it was.
When I had to write the mission president every week, your letters to the president, I just made them up. I made up stories, and I'd talk.
It was your only outlet.
I'd get creative and write some story that was just off the wall, that was clearly a lie, and I'd write it in Reformed Egyptian. The whole letter was in Reformed Egyptian, and said, President didn't know what it said, but I had nothing good to say, so I made stuff up.
Yeah, but that was your outlet. I mean,
that was the outlet. That's
honestly
how you dealt
trying
with it,
to find a way, so that you don't get depressed, you don't get suicidal. Honestly, self-harm is a big one too. When missionaries say, I just started thinking about what I could do to myself that would get me sent home. I'm sorry, any parent that hears that, you need to get your child out of there right away, and that's the one thing I will say. I think that now parents are more aware, and parents are more like, just come home. Back in the day, remember, better in a pine box than to come home. And I see that getting better, because what parent in their right mind is going to hear those kinds of things, those red flags, and not go, okay, church aside, life is long, let's get you into a safe place. And I'm impressed with your family, because even 10 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the prevalent attitude,
Mm-hmm.
and they seemed like they, love you over any of the other stuff. So yeah, give us a little synopsis of what happened, after that, and how you are now. Because this story, I think this is really going to trigger a lot of people. Honestly, some people, they're just like, yeah, my mission was great. But when you really drill down, there are things that are there that are really hard to get over.
Yeah, I just did not talk about my mission much unless I ran into guys. I was roommates with a guy who was on my missions like that. I kept in touch. Like, I was really good friends with a guy from missions. We talked about it together because we could understand, like, with unspoken, like, we know the trauma, we know the problems, we know the terrible things, and we could just talk stories, and we kind of talk in like this code, almost like we were almost like, and other people just be like, what are you guys talking about? Or just like, they think it's absolutely bizarre. But no, it's I never got shamed from my family, thank goodness. They're great in that aspect. But I went back to a wedding. I was supposed to be home June 2016. So I was supposed to be home. I went to a wedding. I got invited to a wedding. So one of my close friends growing up in high school was getting married April 2016. And I reached out and contacted him saying like, hey, I heard you're getting married. Congratulations. He's like, hey, I want you to come. So I did. And it was back in my home ward in Washington State where that other, my trainer, my first companion, same home ward. And so they knew they kept track of us because they thought it was quite remarkable that two guys from the same ward are going there. So they were very aware of me. And that's where I got the shame pretty
really
good. So like, it was because when I nobody knew I was coming except for the groom of that wedding, and it was at the old church building that we'd meet in. And I walked into the culture hall, like kind of afraid, knowing what's going to happen. It's like that. I walk in and everybody, and like people who like were my peers, my, youth like leaders, and they all just kind of looked at me and they're kind of like, what the, like, it's like they like Mormons just know these things, especially like
Yeah.
more fanatical congregations like this one. They keep track of like, he's not supposed to be here. He's
Yeah.
supposed to be
They're
on his mission.
counting. Wait a minute. When did he leave? I
Yeah,
guarantee they were all
exactly.
whispering that. Didn't he go out in December? What is it? Oh, I guarantee they were doing that. Yep.
Yeah. And there was some other guys, there's some other people my age that I sat down next to, and one of them came home early off his mission too. And he and I had this understanding of like,
Yeah.
we know. Um, and he quit his mission because it was just horribly traumatic and other reasons too. But I remember my bishop walking in, and this is a guy that we looked up to. He shaped us into men, and every single time he would walk into the room, we would all like ship shape, and priest quorum. And in the LDS Church, you look to your leaders for validation. I mean, that's kind of what, by extension, your spiritual well-being and you look for validation from your peers. And you're always looking for their approval, for your sense of worthiness, for your sense of progress in the church, and always looking for to climb that next rung of the ladder. And you need their approval, you need their validation to do so. And so he walks into the room, to this culture hall, and he looks straight, like we lock eyes. Because I look over at him, and like he looks straight at me, stops, and we just like stare at each other a good few seconds. And he just kind of like puts a face of like an expression of contempt on, and just turns his head sharply and just walks away. And that just shattered me. He didn't even have to speak a word, and it just shattered me, because it's like almost all that validation for years that I looked towards as a leader, and this is a guy I looked up to. All that was just revoked, my entire youth, I felt like. And that shattered me and broke me. And that shame, that silence of shame started, like, maybe I should keep quiet about all this, started to creep back in. Yeah, so after that, I went back to college, and all these, that trauma, you subconsciously just suppress it all, but that trauma is just still there. All these bad experiences, all these terrible things, the shame culture, you can't stand being in church anymore. I stopped caring about what the church said. I was sick and tired of like mediators of men just dictating my relationship between me and God, and whoever happens to be that leader in that position, that's kind of like where my spiritual well-being is going to be, is based on their care and judgment. And it could be really good or really bad. And it's just luck of the draw. I was absolutely sick of that. I'm like, I don't care what men say anymore. I don't care what the institution says anymore. I only care what God says anymore, because that's the only thing that really truly matters at this point. But I was just really angry all the time, very dark, very morose all the time. And, started slipping into kind of depression off and on. I ended up turning to alcohol to help suppress those thoughts and feelings, to numb the pain from that, like just your thoughts and your frustration of life, frustration of the church, frustration with your reality that you think is what's around you. And I was in Orem, Utah, so like it's basically an extension of Provo. So like when people talk to me and talk to me long enough, you just like, oh, you left home early. What happened? I can't even describe what happened to them. So dating sometimes got awkward because of that. But yeah, so I ate, alcohol, it numbed the pain, and then and I turned to nicotine. And then one of my roommates was a mission friend of mine, and he was getting into smoking weed pretty heavily.
Wow.
Almost every single day, for like weeks. He'd just be, and he's turning to substances just like I was. And whenever we'd run into other former missionaries in the mission, we were finding out more and more of us were leaving the church, more and more of us going inactive. I think all of us were inactive at that point, but some were actually starting to leave the church, which is like, that point wasn't nearly as common, but like that's my first experience with meeting people who left the church, was former missionaries from my mission leaving the church straight up.
And you're right, that's early days. You didn't know of people that were leaving then. Nope. It was not common, but you're saying everybody you ran into, there was a lot of them that was it.
2017, like they weren't just leaving. They were like, no, I went through and pulled my records and left the records in 2017. Yeah. Wow. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? But because I still believed in the theology, but I was like, I would go to church and absolutely hated it. I get so pissed off in sacrament meeting, because I knew that this was all just kind of like a facade, and I knew the institution behind it. And like, I still believed in the theology. So that's why I was still there. And I was still looking to the institution for validation, because I didn't know anything else. and I didn't know what truth was outside of the church. And so I was like, I have no choice but to be here. But I'd only go for the first hour and I wouldn't attend the second or third after that. But and then I knew I was just like a sinner because I was, drinking and vaping and smoking weed sometimes with my roommate. But I kind of crashed out pretty bad with that because I greened out pretty bad one evening with my mission friend. I don't know if you know what greening out is, pretty much where you can't overdose on marijuana per se, like,
Right.
but there is a point where if you can consume way too much of it, you it's called greening out pretty much. You're not in danger, but you think you're gonna die. You I think, it's like my heart beat max, like my blood pressure just completely spiked and I could feel the blood flowing through my veins through my limbs and stuff like that. And I was hallucinating like crazy, going through extreme panic attacks. My heart was like just my heart rate is completely maxed out for like 3 hours, 4 hours. I'm like, I need to go to the hospital because I think I'm gonna die. I need an instant panic attack. You can't see anything either, it's all blurred. So I just get dumped off at the hospital with my friend. Complete mess. But I'm on my parents' insurance, and so like they're gonna know.
Right.
And so after this event, I called my dad and I told him like, hey, this is what happened. I just got out of the hospital and I've been drinking, I've been, consuming nicotine, and I got here because I've been consuming weed. Oh, my dad was so upset with me. And that's where he got really upset because he was worried the path I was going down was a really bad one. And so, and I remember like I came home and I was like, when you green out like that, you're not psychologically okay for like a couple months afterwards. Like there's a recovery
Really?
time from that. At least for
Wow.
me, I was not okay. And then also it just wasn't, I was just not okay in general from like the mission itself. This is like 2018. It's like, and like 2.5 years later. But, um, and I remember like I was just like just got angry with my mom and just was just harsh and short with my parents and stuff like that. I remember my dad taking me back to the airport, sending me back to college for like a Thanksgiving break. He just screamed at me in the car. I've never seen that reaction out of him before. He was just worried, and he connected it to my mission, saying like, he's like, I wish he almost pretty much alluding to, I wish you didn't go on that mission because of what it's done to you.
Wow, he saw it because some
Yeah.
parents don't. They would never see anything negative, a negative consequence from being involved in the church, but he was able to connect that. Wow.
I don't think he quite said it that way, but I think that was like the implied message
Yeah.
that I took away. But it was, um, so yeah, it was, and then he just kind of turned me back to the church. And so I met with like the bishop. And so he's like, you just need to get help from the bishop. And then I met with the bishop there and I told him just like, hey, this is kind of what went on. And he's like, I have a son who came home from his mission and he absolutely refuses to affiliate with the church too. And he's very much in the same situation as you, struggling with the exact same things. And he basically kind of alluded to saying like, here's like the textbook of what the church says to help, like go to the temple, abstain from taking the sacrament for 3 weeks, read your scriptures, we'll meet up again, but just go to the temple. I'm like, I'm not going to the temple, dude. I don't want to do that. I always made me feel uncomfortable in the first place. I don't want to do that. And that threw him off. I don't think he's ever heard anybody reject going to the temple, like, because I'm like, I don't like it. But
Let's be honest.
yeah.
If people were honest, most people don't like it.
Yeah, the message I got from him was just like, if you can figure out yourself, let me know because I want to do the same thing for my son, basically. And I was just kind of like, oh, I don't know, I'm not going to get any help here. But yeah, it wasn't until I was very distant. Like I kept my records in like the YSA ward in like Phoenix, where my parents were
Oh,
at,
under
and
the
so
radar. Yeah, I
and
get
so
that.
under the radar again. So like it's my like all the wards I was in for college, they never knew I was part of like I was not in the church
Right.
membership. I was
They
kind of like a
couldn't
ghost
track you.
appearing. And they keep praying me like, "Who are you? We don't have your name on the records." And I'm just like, "Oh nope, I'm just visiting," and just leave. But and I kept it that way on purpose, so I wouldn't get any contact, nothing at all. And yeah, it wasn't until um I moved to where I'm at now in southern Utah, and I came to the wards here, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't, I cannot stand this. I can't stand the church. I can't stand it anymore. The community is just dead because after COVID, they kind of, and all the changes Nelson did, they kind of eroded all the programs and just kind of showed it in its
Yeah.
raw form
Yep.
of what the institution really was. And I'm just like, this is just ridiculous. Like, I can't stand being honest anymore. It's actually more hurt. It hurts me inside to come to church, and there's a problem. I can't do that anymore. But but I ended up started attending. So I started dating my now wife, and I started she's been a Christian her whole life since she was a kid. And she'd been attending like a local Baptist church and stuff. And so when I started dating her, I started meeting other people in her congregation, met the pastor and his wife, and because they want to know who like a very beloved member of the congregation, who is she dating? So they want to meet
Right.
her. And I met a bunch of other people in the congregation. I was like, you know what? I've already met like half the congregation, and I'm like going into this life of like hedonism basically. And I'm like, this isn't. I'm going like darker and darker, and I'm like, I don't want to end up like where I was again. So I need some kind of spirituality in my life, and so I'm just going to attend this Baptist church, and I'm just going to see where it goes. Um, and like for growing up, we're always saying like, oh, Baptists, like they're going to try to like convert. If you find out you're Mormon, they're going to try to convert you. They're going to tear into you. They're going to fight you. They're the most hostile.
Yeah.
This congregation was not like that at all. They were kind of like, oh, you're LDS. Oh, well, welcome. We're just here. Like we want you just to grow your relationship with God, and that's kind of what we want you to focus on. God, if any, and they were just super, super lovely. And the pastors is kind of like, hey, if you're here to learn, that's all we want, and we're here to grow your relationship with God. There are no mediators here. I have no authority. I'm just here as just helping lead people. That's it.
How different to hear that, huh? You
Oh,
don't have
yes.
to go through anyone to get to, what you see as your spiritual center for you. So yeah, that's very different, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I attended I actually enjoyed it thoroughly. I mean, they actually taught you how to interpret the Bible. They taught you how to read scripture. They taught you how to grow your relationship with God without anybody in between. And it was like the gospel in its raw form. But it was a Protestant gospel though, so it's different. But and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I even when my now wife, when she wouldn't go, I was there by myself. And people thought that was remarkable. Like basically this Mormon guy is showing up by himself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so I started listening to when they talk about what they believe in and the beliefs and their relationship with God, I noticed something very different because they were like the image, like the type of congregation that the LDS Church could only dream of. Like they were just such lovely people, very devoted in their faith, but not in an overbearing way, just actually in a happy way. And when they'd preach, I'm like, I 100% agree with everything they're talking about. And they have, like tons of scripture backing up exactly what it is they're talking about. And so I'm like, I understand why I agree what they're talking about. I understand why they believe it. But the problem is it conflicts with all these LDS beliefs that I have. And because you're going into like, justification by faith alone religion, whereas LDS Church is a works-based faith. Yeah. And so that's when I started looking at things. My path was a little bit different than most. Most people like leave the LDS Church because of historical reasons. I actually left primarily because of theological reasons first. And so I went in deep into like the Reformation literature, Protestant Reformation literature, just seeing like what was their experience with leaving an oppressive religion that's like a works-based faith that was corrupt, and what was their path, and how did they, like Martin Luther, John Calvin, and what was their path when they left it, and the deconstruction they went through, and they did a massive theological retrieval, figuring out like what should we actually be believing here? What does the Bible actually say? And that was an immense help. But then after that, I was like, okay, I now need to go into historical facts. And I went through all of that. So Mormon Enigma, Emma Hill Smith, that's the book that really got me.
Yeah.
Same with Grant Palmer as well. Wow. He helped.
Yeah, you did your due diligence, didn't you?
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
But yeah, then I had, a very personal experience with grace and actually seeing what that actually is. And
how'd your father receive this? I mean, it sounds like you're changing for what he would see as the better, but you're leaving the church, which he would see as the worst,
Yeah. And that's the awkward thing that I'm still trying to figure out, because my family knows that I've disassociated with the LDS Church. and they've known that since, I've been disassociated for probably about over 4.5 years now. And they know I've been attending this local Baptist church and I thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, they can't, and they nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
They I think they're too afraid to ask anytime I bring up religion or talk about it or talk about like these, all this random, theological knowledge and biblical knowledge that I have now. They don't want to, they just kind of steer away from that. Like, nope, we don't want to go into that. And it gets awkward. So,
but they must be happy because you're married, and you're attending, you found a faith tradition together. I mean, that's a happy thing in a positive, healthy way. So they must, I would say as a parent, I would think, okay, I'm happy for my child.
I'm sure that, yeah, they are. They do
Yeah.
express that and they give me a lot of support in that aspect.
Yeah.
Even though they came to the wedding and it was, that Baptist a preacher giving the wedding, and it was not a temple marriage.
Yes.
All my relatives are there, so like half the people attending were like, half of it was Mormon, the other half was like Baptist,
Right.
and then you had your small secular crowd that didn't affiliate with religion, and then like alcohol was served at the wedding. It's like that, so like people could tell. So I had people come up to me, tons of coworkers, like, "You're not Mormon anymore, are you?" And so like that's, I had a lot of conversations with them about that, but. My family could sense something was up, but and relatives, they're kind of like, this is odd. Something's up here, but nobody wants to talk about it. I think they're too afraid to ask.
And so, and that's okay. I mean, it's still a happy ending, that you landed in a place where, if there's still healing to be done from that mission, you can do it. Like you said, you have a partner who's like, let's work through this, but just to hear a bishop's son had the same experience, your companion, this is a rampant situation, I think, where as parents, we send our kids out there, this will be great. And then you start hearing some of the realities and, bad to worse, I think, quickly sometimes. I mean, your mission, Landon, you were just like bored to death, got to get through it. It did nothing for you, as you describe, except for make you say, I got to get through this,
Yeah. Yeah. That was it. It was more of a mental, you tried to say mental toughness, maybe, that you could shut everything down and just exist in your own head till you could get out of it. That was how I felt. And once it was over, I was off. I went and got a job. I didn't want it, it was like, this was a waste of 2 years of my life. I'm getting back to living.
Yeah. And you felt that even as a faithful Mormon, because then you were faithful for another 30 years and you still felt that the mission, although you had to do it for all the reasons you have to, it was a waste,
I saw the same thing. I saw the same thing Tanner saw. I saw the inner workings of the church and I hated it. I was like, I believe that, the people in the community and all of that, but you lost your community. You got that elder community when you were on a mission, but you didn't. And I always felt they tried to make me change and conform. And I was like, I'm a perfectly fine person right now. I was perfectly good in the church. I was a golden child. I did everything I was supposed to.
You were
I got
a
out on my
child,
mission, and
Landon.
you're not good enough because you're not kissing everyone's butt, and you're not changing and saying this is the doing what Tanner said. Just speaking good about it when you're going, clearly this isn't good. There's a lot of bad stuff happening here, but you're not allowed to speak it. And I was a lot like Tanner. I wasn't afraid to say, there's some problems here. And that never goes over well with church leadership when you tell them there's holes in their system.
You were a troublemaker, that's for sure. But you really were a platinum child. I mean, you didn't even date because you're like, why would I? I just need to go on my mission. And then, like that. And then we had an episode, Tanner, where we read through Landon's mission journals very early on when we started the podcast. And I was just it made me so sad as he read through, like the second page in the MTC, it started out by, I feel so guilty. I feel so terrible. I'm like, what in the world would you're this, really awesome teenager. And instantly the system, and you're writing down about your guilt and how you feel. That's just heartbreaking, I think. And I think it's a process, whether they meant it to be that way of breaking you down, it happens. So I think the fact that you wrote this article, again, everybody, Tanner's article is in Medium. It kind of describes the situation we talked about here with a few other details. I'm going to link that in the show notes, and just being brave enough and vulnerable enough to share the story, because when you feel like you had this experience and other people are like, oh, my mission, it was incredible. And you're like, there's something different. It's hard to do that. It's hard because people won't own up to it or admit it, even if there were problems. So no, you're amazing to come on a podcast and talk about it. So, and your post that you made had so many responses. And I did see there were people that, I think said, yeah, I was in that mission, or they were like corroborating the things that you were saying. And I'm just so curious if anybody else knows anything about that era and that mission. And, was it just some bizarre experiment, some kind of weird, I don't know. I don't even know what to think. I'm not surprised, but it's crazy that you would come out and say that. So, and like you said, now I think service missions is probably just so much of a better option for everybody, because in the situations that you tell, these people that are maybe trying to harm other people or whatever, I'm also very devastated for them too, because they need to be in a safer environment, with whatever issues they have. They should not be there in that situation that is making them, bringing out the worst behavior. You know what I mean? As a parent, I would want, your child's not safe, either way, there's not safety there. There's nobody that's skilled. There's nobody that has knowledge on how to deal with these scenarios. So yeah, I'm really curious in the comments, everybody, if you had similar mission experiences or even know something specifically about Tucson. So any last comments, Landon? We just really want to thank Tanner for coming on. It's just been, I'm looking at the time going, wow, that really went fast. I was just riveted the whole time. So any last thing from you, Landon? I just thought it was heartbreaking, but important to talk about with a positive ending. So that's a good thing.
It brought back some memories to me, not pleasant ones at times.
Landon's looking triggered. I can see it there kind of going, ah.
Yeah. So I understand where you're coming from, and it's that unspoken LDS thing that you never say anything negative about your mission or about what happened, even though half the people coming home are leaving after
the statistics are huge now, aren't they? I'm sure you probably still, and that's my last question for you, Tanner. How much do you still follow? Or, obviously you must follow some of the post-Mormon community because you made this post in, the post-Mormon social media arena. So, are you able to just kind of distance yourself, or are you still fascinated on the outside looking in, or what's your interest or involvement?
Yeah, it's, I like binge Mormon stories coming out. Just like, is anyone else thinking the same thing? Oh my gosh, I'm not alone. You get into those.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah. And then other podcasts like this one and others. And then I spent time on the ex-Mormon subreddit, and I still keep tabs. It's not very frequent anymore, but I do probably like a couple times a week. We'll just take a look at what episodes are out there on YouTube or what's on the ex-Mormon subreddit, because that's kind of like the central hub. Yeah. And just to keep tabs and knowing what my family's going through and what they're experiencing, so I can actually still relate with them since they're still in, and some other, people, friends, coworkers around me, what they're experiencing. And it is curious about the changes, because I think the church is trying to evolve to survive, in my opinion. But and so I'm just curious, and I get a lot of questions from people in the community too, especially other Christians too, just like, what is this religion? What is, because they don't really understand LDS religion. And so I'm kind of like, I teach them a lot of things and telling them what's going on.
Like a liaison, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. And what you say is true, because you have so many faithful, all of us, family members, friends, and you do have to still know, because you're going to lose all credibility if you say, is it still President Monson? You're just, there's no more credibility. So you have to know, you have to know what's going on. So, this has been just amazing. And again, thank you, Tanner, for just being so brave to tell your story and to say it out loud. It sounds like you've always done it, and that's you. So that's amazing. So let us know in the comments, everybody, what you thought about this. Does it remind you of your mission, and anything that you know about the Tucson mission? I think I'm just fascinated to know how this experiment started and how long it went on. And it's just a really interesting chapter that there's not that much about. I mean, except for people kind of being a whistleblower, you're not going to find out. So please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit the notification bell. If you'd like to help financially support Mormonish, which we just absolutely love and adore and appreciate everybody that does, we have links in the show notes where we are a nonprofit, and we have links to donor box where you can make a donation if you are so inclined. We also have our links to our merch store where you can pick up a Mormonish mug or a hat or something. And again, thank you, Landon, for co-hosting and reliving some of those mission moments. I feel like you're going to have to go have some downtime now, or maybe break out your journals and work through it, power through. That's healthy too. And thank you again, Tanner. And we will see everybody next time on Mormonish Podcast. Thanks all.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.